talk about Liverpool's win against Newcastle?
Brilliant
because
win.
it's a game that brought all the chaos.
It did. You know, obviously the sending off, but like Newcastle with Gordon, I thought Gordon, what I've seen of him up until this point, that's the best I've ever seen. And I know he's nowhere near what his final form is, but he caused so many problems for them. Yeah. They looked so dishevelled with him and running at them.
I tell you what, you're the first person I've seen make him the headline player from that game. But he did get the opening goal of it. Let's hear what Jurgen Klopp made of it.
It was more difficult than the Barcelona game.
Really?
Yeah, of course, because the Barcelona game was at home. We played a sensational first game, lost it 3-0, but knew a lot about ourselves. Today is completely different. You need these kind of things to grow together, and you cannot create it. You have to force it pretty much, and the boys did that today. Oh my God, how much I enjoyed that in the last second and the second goal. And half-time we said, if he can turn this, then it's really something we can tell our grandkids, and I see mine in 10 days, so I will tell him.
Yeah, Jurgen Klopp became a grandfather over the break over the summer, so he's going over to tell a very small baby all about that win against Newcastle United. But look, that was a very heavily edited interview and very heavily edited answer from Jurgen Klopp. There was so much emotion in those post-match interviews, both from him, from Trent Alexander-Arnold, from Alisson. There was a sort of Spanish language interview from Darwin Nunez. Emotions were running really high, but better than the win against Barcelona, or up there with the win against Barcelona when they were 3-0 down and had to win 4-0 at Anfield? Really?
And
with 10 men as well.
I think that the drama of the actual occasion is one thing, but you're right to point out the fact that it was a heavily edited interview, because he was also asked about whether it could be the turning point for Darwin Nunez and for Liverpool's season. In fact, the Liverpool reboot. And he was saying, actually, yes, because I'm still trying to build a team. People are asking when Nunez will get a regular start in the team, and he was saying, I still don't know what my best team is. I've got 3 new midfielders, and I have strikers to burn, so what am I going to do? Now, I think you're right. When you think about Barcelona and the platform it gave Liverpool to win silverware, they are epoch-making moments. But I think as far as the culture of this new team he's trying to build, you guys can talk better to me than to the fact that sometimes you need a win like this to band a group of players together to kind of set them. They can look back at this moment as the time we fought, we dug in, and we pulled off an outstanding win. If you think about the fact that Newcastle's home record's outstanding. They've only lost before yesterday 4 times in 34 matches at home.
3 of them were against Liverpool.
Exactly. And that's the reason why yesterday was such a good win, because that win yesterday was the 3rd. But it was pulled off with a really a new team, a new midfield, a group of players that not a lot of people had a lot of belief in. I think that is one of the best performances for a long time. I wouldn't say better than Barcelona, but I do say better than a lot of performances in the recent past.
It will be sweeter for Liverpool because there are always teams that are chasing your tail. And Newcastle are that team that are chasing the tail. So if you're in Liverpool's camp right now, to do one over your rivals, obviously not geographically, but in terms of where the league is at, that's why it would have been even sweeter for Liverpool yesterday.
Absolutely. I mean, when I see that sort of interview, I'm always looking for, as the journalist, what I can take out of it. And sometimes post-match interviews are just, it's great that we won. It's fantastic that we won. I'm really pleased.
Seems something deep.
But I learned a lot from that because what he seemed to be... I was quite struck, for example, by the fact that he was saying, I still don't know what my best team is. I still don't know what my best formation is. And then him saying, you know, this is a... It's weird because 1 minute he said it and then he seemed to row back on it. But I definitely do think yesterday was a huge moment in terms of the direction he wants to take the team in, the character the team's building together. Jose Mourinho used to say, whenever he built a team, I want to win something, anything, just so that we can sample that culture of winning. And I think that's what this Liverpool did yesterday.
What I think's really interesting is how quickly the narrative changes in football. We've only had 3 games, and I think the story around both these clubs has changed probably 3 times over the course of the weekend. But it is just really interesting that suddenly you look at the 3 results that they've had so far. You think, well, Liverpool, patchy performance maybe in a 1-1 draw against Chelsea on the opening weekend. And then they follow that up with a win against Bournemouth, but they started very shakily and they were expected to beat Bournemouth at home anyway. You look at Newcastle, who start with a fanfare, with that fantastic performance and result against Aston Villa. Then it's a 1-0 defeat by Manchester City, which up until the start of the game against Liverpool was everybody gets beat by Manchester City. No shame in that one. And now people are looking maybe at the performance and saying, well, they just didn't quite seem like themselves. And now that they've crumbled, you know, they were up against 10 men and they've squandered a 1-0 lead. The story around Newcastle, with Brighton coming up at the Amex next season, next weekend, is a completely different feel around the club. Is that what you're looking for at the early stage of the season? As Darren said, those moments in those games that can just drive the whole feeling behind the club.
Yes, you do. And you know, I saw a lot of stuff with Trent the other day, with him inverting and then obviously Gordon scoring the goal and then, you know, Van Dijk getting sent off. I think one of the big worries for me is their centre-halves, whether it's Joel Matip, Joe Gomez, you know, and Konate. You know, when you're going to invert like Trent is, you do need somebody behind you who's really who's confident of cleaning that up, like Arsenal with Saliba. You see how much we missed him. There's so many things like that can go wrong with Liverpool that once they get that right, I think the strengthen that defence up, and then you've got that midfield now, you can start seeing that you're going to get something from that. And then what else we're seeing from Liverpool is a sturdiness that they're going to not concede. Then if you've got Nuno, if you've got Gomez now, was it?
Darwin Nunez.
Darwin Nunez. I've been away quite a while,
Jet lagged, yeah.
When you see Darwin Nunez...
Because I know you know who Darwin Nunez is.
Said it in an Aussie accent.
Mate.
When you see Darwin Nunez taking half chances when you've gone down to 10 men, that does that galvanises. Yeah. And that will galvanise him and the team, because what the team will then realise is that we can keep this tight. Yeah. Our midfield's starting to get solid. I still believe the back line's what Liverpool have to worry about, even when Virgil comes back. And then if Darwin Nunez continues to score like that and not missing the chance what he's missing last season, then Liverpool will be way amongst that. They will be amongst it.
I'm going to come on to Darwin Nunez because I was trying to work out where the best place to talk about him is. And now you've mentioned him, I feel like this could be a seminal moment for him as well, to have a game in which he scores 2 late goals, in which he does it in style as well. I mean, these aren't scuffed, you know, bundling balls over the line. These are really cool, collected finishes. And that's what he's been accused of lacking in previous games.
He's just 20, he's what, 24 now? 24, you know, he's not long been, he's come from different league. He's come to a massive club like Liverpool. He's eager to do well. And you could see that with some of his finishes last season. Finishes where you think, how's he missed that? And getting himself into positions where you think, wow, what great movement, but then not quite finishing off. If people are going to judge him on that, they're making a big mistake, a massive mistake, because what I saw of him and what you see of him when he finishes, he still tries to finish how he should. He doesn't he's not tentative. Yeah. And what we saw with those 2 finishes, they weren't tentative. That was somebody who's obviously worked a lot more on himself, on his basics. From that side of the pitch, I'm going to hit it across the goalkeeper, I'm going to get my tack, and bam, that's clinical. And 2 really clinical finishes that they both needed.
Do you think the pressure got to him last season?
I think
because he missed chances. As a Premier League striker for Liverpool, you should be scoring.
Yes.
Right? Those 2 finishes yesterday were clean, clinical, fast, top-class finishes.
You know what will happen is that as you continue to miss and you've come for such a big number and teams are having a go at Liverpool, he's a flop, he's this and that. You hear about this, you know, you get more tense, you get tighter. And some of the finishes, what you see him try, it was tight finishes. It was somebody that was like wound up. The 2 finishes the other day were 2 finishes in a time of the game, we're down to 10 men, of real composure and clinicalness. And that, if he's clicked, then people are in trouble.
Do you know, the great thing about what you're saying, and without embarrassing here, is that you're not being wise after the event. We did many shows last season when you were saying, if he gets the opportunities and he keeps putting himself forward for those opportunities, he will be in a position to score a lot of goals, and which looks as though that's about to happen. But the other thing you just said a second ago, us in the media, the culture of the way we judge players has changed now. And we are now much more mindful of the fact that if a player comes from a different league, they're coming from a different culture. Another of the things that struck me about the post-match yesterday was the fact that he doesn't even speak English yet. Alisson does, and Alisson's English was first class. He's been there now 5 years, but he couldn't when he got to this country.
Jurgen Klopp has talked about that with Darwin Nunez towards the end of last season and said that sometimes it can be an issue because he's trying to relay tactical information on the training ground, and he does speak some English, but isn't confident enough to do an interview in it.
Listening to Jurgen Klopp and his post-matches, I struggle to understand him. And the same with Andy Robertson screaming down the dressing room, you know, before the game. You can imagine how riled up some of the players get. And you probably, for Darwin Nunez, he's probably stood there wondering what the hell's going on.
And I think for us as journalists, you know, we have to. And we are, you know, and I think about a lot of the way my colleagues judge some of these players. Huge price tag, yes, but he's come from a different league, a different culture, different style of play. His family have yet to adapt to life in this country as well. And as everybody knows, you're happy at home, you're happy at work. And I think as far as he is concerned, you can't even begin to judge him.
No.
Until you get to a place where he is operating with everything falling into place. And that's why for me, I start to look at him this season, not last season.
But he took yesterday by the scruff of the neck and just said, I'm going to sort this out. And it was a positive impact that he had, but as well as the other substitutions Jurgen Klopp made towards the end of the game, you know, you're down to 10 men, you're thinking, oh, should we, you know, sit off and play for a draw? But they absolutely went for it. And as soon as he banged the first one in, you're thinking, OK, it's coming. You could feel it brewing. Liverpool were going to score again.
Lizzie, do you think that... I was watching this with my kids, and my kids don't think I know anything about football. But I was saying, like, I think they're staying in the game until the 77th minute, and then he put on those two offensive substitutions, and they really did seem to turn the tide of the game in Liverpool's favour. Do you think that was deliberate?
I think it was, because he's done it before. He's come back from being 10 men down before to win the games. I think there's a statistic I can't remember off the top of my head, but I also look at it and go, well, on the flip side, it was Newcastle's poor game management as well. I think it was a little bit of both, but I think it was a really positive step from Jurgen Klopp. And going back to your original point, right, about Anthony Gordon, we saw a game yesterday that could be the making of two Premier League strikers. Because Anthony Gordon needed a goal. That was his first goal at St James's Park, and you're like, hang on a minute, he came there to be a big player, and he's not been shy admitting that. And, you know, big confidence from the man, but also, like, why not? Why not go for it? And I think yesterday, although they lost the game, you're thinking, OK, could this be the start of something big for Anthony Gordon coming up?
You hope so.
Oh, but what's interesting, as you said, is that he was substituted.
Unbelievable.
And you talked about, you know, poor game management from Newcastle's point of view and good substitutions from Liverpool, about the patience, and there's maybe one wave of attack before they had that wave that resulted in the two goals that won them the game. But substitutions were absolutely key in that game. Jurgen Klopp went very attacking with his substitutions. And Eddie Howe seemed to take off the players who were hurting Liverpool the most. Now, someone like Tonali maybe isn't up to full 90-minute fitness yet. And there are some of them you could make that case for. But some of them you could question. You could say the game turned on the substitution. Yeah,
and it comes back to the narrative that you were discussing before. Now, all of a sudden, are we, you know, speaking about Newcastle? OK, what are they doing now? They're playing Brighton this weekend coming up. But going back to the substitutions, the Newcastle ones, I'm, like, thinking... Is this part of the narrative of Eddie Howe, creating this team where he's kind of nurturing players and he's giving minutes out? Like, right, you played in the Premier League. Like, giving minutes out. Like, you can't be giving minutes out in the Premier League. You've got to, you know, earn them, which I understand. But also, like, hang on a minute, what does the game need?
And if that
player needs 30 minutes, he's sat on my bench, but I don't need him in this game. You don't play him on for 30 minutes.
No. I just think that when... especially, you can imagine that Raw and Anthony Gordon. This is it. He's there. He's playing against a top team, and he's ripping them to shreds. And that, for me as well, mentally, you think, so, what's that? Why is he taking me off?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's no way the Liverpool defenders are not thinking, thank goodness he's going off.
Yeah.
You just can't. You know what it does as well is you can. When a good player gets taken off, the players themselves look around at each other saying, why is he taking him off? It has an effect on the team.
But he brought Harvey Barnes in, put Harvey Barnes on, probably with the theory that I'm going to keep fresh legs on Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? Harvey Barnes gets a chance down the left, needs to square it to Callum Wilson because Callum Wilson's in my fantasy team. Right? But he doesn't do it. He doesn't do it. And I'm thinking that's a big...
To it.
Surely that settles it. That is just remarkable, the amount of bend he got on that.
Well, the ball flight may be unpredictable, but the predictable part was the technique. It screamed goal all the way.
After 85 minutes is...
He's made it 2, and no doubt he's hungry for more.